Namaste Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatara Sata Shishimari Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nithai Bhagavan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nithai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto number 3, chapter 30, description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruitive activities. Text number 1. Kapila uvacha tasyai tasya jano nunam tasyai tasya jano nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Kalyamano Pibalino Vayor Iva Ganavali Vayoriva Ganavali. Kapilo Vacha Tasye Tasya Jano Nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Vayoriva Ganavali. Kapilo Vacha Tasya Tasya Jano Nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Vayoriva Ganavali. Prabhus. Kapilo Vacha Tasya Tasya Jano Nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Vayoriva Ganavali. Kapilo Vacha Tasya Tasya Jano Nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Vayoriva Ganavali. Anyone else? Mataji? Kapilo Vacha Tasya Tasya Jano Nunam Nayam Vedoru Vikramam Kalyamano Pibalino Vayoriva Ganavali. Anyone else? Word for word. Kapila Vacha. Lord Kapila said, Tasya etasya, of this very time factor, Janaha, person, Nunam, certainly, Na, not. I am this. Veda knows. Uru Vikramam, the great strength. Kalyamanaha, being carried off. Api, although. Balinaha, powerful. Vayoho, of the wind. Iva, like. Gana, of clouds. Avalihi, a mass. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the personality of Godhead said, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. You can repeat after me. The personality of Godhead said, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. Purport: the great politician Pandit named Chanakya said that even one moment of time cannot be returned, even if one is prepared to pay millions of dollars. One cannot calculate the amount of loss there is in wasting valuable time. Either materially or spiritually, one should be very alert in utilizing the time which he has at his disposal. A conditioned soul lives in a particular body for a fixed measurement of time, and it is recommended in the scriptures that within that small measurement of time, one has to finish Krishna consciousness and thus gain release from the influence of the time factor. But unfortunately, those who are not in Krishna consciousness are carried away by the strong power of time, without their knowledge, as clouds are carried by the wind. Translation again. The personality of Godhead said, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachalam bhangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurun Dintaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So we're starting a new chapter, chapter 30 of Kapila Dev's instructions to Mother Devahuti. And these couple of chapters are specifically dealing with a question Mother Devahuti asked Kapila Dev. I believe it's in early on in this canto, in this chapter, or the previous chapter. Devahuti starts to ask the Lord about, my dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and the people in general, the continual process of birth and death. For by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. So, please also describe eternal time, which is the representation of your form, and by whose influence people in general engage in the performance of pious activities. My dear Lord, you are just like the sun, for you illuminate the darkness of the conditional life of the living entities, because their eyes of knowledge are not open. They are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter, and therefore they are falsely engaged in the actions and reactions of their material activities, and they appear to be very fatigued. So this section is mainly dealing with fruitive activities, as the chapter says, description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruitive activities. And it's a very important section. Of course, all of Bhagavatam is important, but this particular chapter is very important because it teaches us the value of human form of life, and also it teaches us what life has to offer to us in the material world. Because when we are born into this material world, especially as human beings, there is some sort of overrated hype that's there in material existence. It's a exaggerated sense of achievement or appreciation of material existence, of material happiness. And everyone has gone through it in different ways, in different variations, different permutation and combinations. But basically it boils down to how we take birth and struggle for material existence to become successful in life, only to die again. But although this fact is very obvious, although it's in your face, it's a glaring fact. As Prabhupada often loves to quote, how Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he and his brothers were in the forest during Vanavas, that means they were living in the forest, I believe this is after the house of lac burnt, there they needed to drink some water. So, to cut the long story short, each one of the Pandava brothers, except for Yudhishthira Maharaj, went and tried to drink water from a lake. And a yaksha was guarding that lake. And this particular yaksha, how to describe? A yaksha is a being of a higher planet. They are generally associates or attendants of Kuvera, the demigod of the treasury. And they're very much linked to the Rakshasa race. So yakshas and rakshasas, they're considered to be of the similar category. Very similar to ghostly beings and so on and so forth. Of that mentality, mainly ignorance. Anyway, this particular yaksha told each one of the brothers, as they first Bhima, of course, Bhima came to drink water, and this yaksha told him, you can drink, who do you think, under whose direction are you drinking this water? This lake belongs to me. And he asks questions and says, if you don't answer these questions, you will die. So like this, each one of the Pandava brothers come to drink water. So Bhima comes to drink, he could not answer the questions, he dies. Then Arjuna comes to drink water. He sees Bhima dying, he sees there's no enemy, and he thinks, let me drink the water first, and then I'll see what to do, and then he dies. And like this, Nakula, Sahadev, they also die. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, seeing that his brothers hadn't returned, went to that particular lake. And he saw all these brothers had passed out, unconscious, on the verge of death. Then he spoke to this yaksha. And during the course of the discussion with the yaksha, it's mentioned that the yaksha asked him, what is the most wonderful thing in this world? And this is quoted so many times in so many places because it's such an obvious fact, but we just don't seem to register it within our consciousness because it disturbs our plans for material enjoyment. Who wants to think of death? So what does Yudhishthira Maharaj say? Ahani hani bhutani gachanti yamalayam. That day by day we are seeing everyone around us entering into the abode of death. Yamaraj is the controller of the abode of death. He, along with Chitragupta, they ratify the living entities' karma. They sum up, tax time. You come to the tax time, you sum up everything and see how much you owe. In the same way, at the end of life, Yamaraj and Chitragupta do the final tax. Right? Finally, what's going to happen? Are you going to get karma for this, for that? Does your good karma outweigh your bad karma? Which hellish planet do you need to go? What's your next life? Yamaraj dictates all of this. Of course, it's under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Maya, but Yamaraj is given the service of directing the souls in this fashion. So then he's saying, we see so many people going to the abode of death. In other words, we see so many people dying around us. Right? But still, we act as if we will live forever, Prabhupada says. If you hear the lectures in which Prabhupada quotes this, it's Prabhupada puts so much emphasis. We think we will live forever. Although people are dying around us, we think we are special. Only we will live forever. Right? And that's an illusion that we like to cover ourselves with. It's a choice. We choose to be in that illusion. We choose to accept that illusory state of consciousness. We choose to accept that we will live forever. Like, for example, I remember, it's a mundane example, but it always comes to mind. I remember when I was in university, or just before I had entered university, there was a very famous person. You've heard of him? I think it was Crazy John's. You've heard of that phone outlet before? Crazy John's? Yeah. Very famous outlet, and he was a very, very successful businessman. He started off with nothing, and he created a whole network of this business in a short amount of time, and he was very wealthy and popular. So he was running a good business. And he had a good family, a wife and 2 children. But then at the age, I think late 30s, he passed away suddenly of a heart attack. Just like that. No indication, no reason, no preemptive indication of whether he was going to die or not. But he just suddenly died. And I remember, it's just another instance. People die, people born, it's just not. But what really struck me at that point in time was the commentary, or the commentators, or the people on the news channel mentioning of how young he was, but he died. He left behind his wife who was young, and his children who were very young. And he just died and left, although he had such a great business. And it sort of struck me at that point in time that for what did he struggle for to end like this? It wasn't what he wanted. It's not what anyone wants. But unfortunately, this is the nature of time. If your time is up, that's it. You have no choice. Prabhupada gives the story of how when he was in Calcutta, I believe, there was one rich man, a friend of his, and he was on his deathbed. And he was pleading to the doctors that, I'll do anything you want. I'll give you as much money as you want. Just please increase the time I have. I have so many things to do. I have so many things to do. And Prabhupada said, what could the doctors do? No matter how much money he gave, what could the doctors do? He had to die. When the time comes, he had to leave the body. There's another story that's given. Of course, it's given in different variations and combinations, but I like to mention it when I meet new people or people fresh to Krishna consciousness, to explain a bit about the temporary nature of material existence. And it's a story that a devotee had told me that made me think a lot and made me accept Krishna consciousness, the philosophy at least. So there, he mentioned that, you all know Alexander the Great, right? Very famous king, considered the most successful king, considering how much countries and how many people he subordinated within a short amount of time, especially during his youth. And it's mentioned that at the end of his life, and his end of life wasn't 30, 50, 60, he died pretty young. And at the end of his life, he had succumbed to a particular disease. And it was mentioned that as he was succumbing and he was coming close to the point of death, he had told his generals to come close. And he had asked them, I have 3 requests. And these 3 requests were that, he said that when I'm dead, when I die, and you do the royal procession throughout the street, I want you to remove all the jewelry from my body. I want the coffin to be open and all the jewelry from my body to be removed. So what he had, of course, they didn't want to do that. So he said that, I want my hands to be outside of the coffin without any jewelry. Then he told them, I want my physicians to carry my coffin. I don't want my generally if it's a royal send-off, you'll have the high generals of the army holding the coffin of the king as he proceeds through the streets. So then he asked, no, I want my physicians, the ones that tried to save me and couldn't save me, to hold. And I want, instead of throwing petals, I want you to throw all my wealth on the street as I pass by. And of course it's a shocking thing because it's a king, someone who requires respect according to etiquette, and that's the total opposite. It's like completely offending the person after they're dead. So then they asked him, why you're doing that? So then the king told him, Alexander, the king told his ministers and his generals that, look, I want people to know that despite all endeavors made by the greatest physicians in this continent, that they could not save me from death, so they should carry my coffin. I want people to know that that by seeing my hands bare, right, I came with nothing, I am leaving with nothing. And why my wealth should be thrown on the street? Yesterday it belonged to someone, today it belongs to me, and tomorrow it will belong to someone else. So it's not really my possession. So it's a story, whether it's true or not. We'll take the essence of it, which is to understand that the temporary nature of material existence. And we can understand a lot from it. We come with nothing. We have so many things now. But when we leave, can we take it with us? No. No, we cannot. And that wealth belonged to someone else before. It has come to us and will go to someone else when we die. So this is the temporary nature of material existence, and we choose not to see it, unfortunately. And Prabhupada's mentioning here that Chanakya said that even a moment of time cannot be returned, even if one is prepared to pay millions of dollars. Now, coming back to why I was saying this chapter was very important, was that it teaches us what's coming up in life. And especially as someone who comes to Krishna consciousness in their youth, for example, 19, younger, 20, 21, even mid-30s, anyone in their youth who hasn't gone through their whole life can understand what is coming, what has come and what is coming. So this is a very valuable chapter because it gives us information, knowledge of what life is like if one just simply slaves hard to satisfy their senses. Okay? And this is what we are taught to aim our life for. We are taught to achieve life in such a way. We are taught to just engage our senses as hard and fast as possible, as much as possible, so that we can earn money and enjoy. But what's awaiting us? Kapila Dev will explain. In fact, Kapila Dev takes a step back at one stage. And that's the next chapter. He'll take a step back and explain what's happening in the womb. How much we suffer by entering the womb. Then he explains how we go through life, through time. And how we go through time, with time we go through life. And at the fag end of our life, at the end of life, how much we suffer. Although it appears we won't suffer, right? When you're young, we think, oh, it's just another day, it's just another hour, it's just another minute. It doesn't matter. As time goes on, we realize every moment counts. We need to use it to make money, we need to use it to make connections, we need to use it for relationships, we have to use it to satisfy the senses. Every moment counts. I don't know if you've noticed, if you just sit down in one place, the mind is geared to force you to think how you enjoyed in the past, what opportunities are there in the future, and whether you're enjoying now. So therefore, when Prabhupada says that we cannot calculate the amount of loss there is in wasting valuable time, you can understand it simply by sitting in one place and trying to meditate. Not chant, meditate. The traditional, stereotypical way of meditating, which is just simply sitting down, closing your eyes, and just breathing. And you can understand the state of mind that we're always geared towards trying to enjoy our senses. Ahara, nidra, bhaya, maitunam cha. These four things dictate our existence in this material world. And these four things are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So when you fast, you realize how much time you have in your day. When you reduce your sleep, you realize how much time. In fact, many of us, we voluntarily forego sleep until 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, just so we can enjoy the night hours. And then we suffer the next day at work. Right? So we understand time is valuable, so therefore we'll sacrifice, or we need to sacrifice any one of these four things. These are, in one sense, the foundation of material existence, not spiritual existence, material existence. And if in material life, we understand that by reducing our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Defending means, revenge. Defending means spending time trying to prove ourselves right. Defending our position from other people. Our wealth, our name, our fame, our position, prestige. If we reduce our time spent in those things, or the effort in putting our energy in all those things, then we understand how much time we have left, right? And in material life, we understand that. You sleep less, you have more time. More time to do what? To work a job and to enjoy the night. Yeah, it's very simple understanding, basic common sense. We reduce our eating. Why? So that we have more money later on, right? We have more time later on. Same thing with mating, the amount of time it takes to get into a relationship and how uncertain it is and the difficulties that come from when it's broken. The time that's gone in such temporary relationships. And then defending. I've already mentioned that. How much time goes, how much anxiety and stress goes, how much you're tortured thinking, what is this person going to do this next? How are they going to take my position? Like you see the pigeons? They're never peaceful. It looks like they're enjoying, but their eyes are constantly going here and there, looking around for danger. So much energy goes into that. So much time is wasted trying to defend oneself. So therefore, spiritual life means that we're actually using our time valuably because we're reducing these four things to nil. That's what it means as moksha or liberation. We no longer focus all our energy simply on eating, sleeping, mating and defending. These things are at the bare minimum, just to maintain the body and soul together. So then we engage our time usefully in spiritual life. So let's take it from another perspective, okay? Valuable form of human life. There are two terms especially given by Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita, he emphasizes this. It's called prayas and shreyas. Short-term benefit and long-term benefit. Okay? Basic terms, basic common sense. A long-term and a short-term. The child doesn't want to go to school. The child wants to play. Short-term benefit. But the parent is thinking, if my child continuously plays like this, what will happen to his or her future? Long-term benefit. Prayas and shreyas. Shreyas is long-term, short-term is prayas. So, if you think of it that way, think beyond the body. Think at the time of death. Alright? Basic understanding is that you're not the body, you're the soul. That is general, basic foundation of spiritual existence. Okay? So that means you're not the body, you'll take up multiple bodies. As Krishna says, right? Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara. Tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatranam uyati. So that an embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age and to another body at the time of death. And a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Okay? Okay, so that's the basics. So then, what is the prayas in this situation? If we took before, just that couple of years of adolescence, not adolescence, even younger than toddler, as a childhood, right? We thought only to enjoy, but our parents thought beyond that. After childhood, when he goes into youth, how are you going to maintain yourself? So you need an education, right? So now let's change our perspective, let's change the frame, context. Now let's see what it's like in this life and beyond this life. So what is the prayas in this? What is the short-term benefit for this life? Can anybody guess? What is the short-term goal we have in this life? Gratify your senses. Something simpler, very simple. To enjoy, unrestrictedly. Do whatever is possible to be able to enjoy. That's our short-term benefit in this. Short-term means in this lifetime, it's the benefit we seek. But what is a long-term benefit? No matter how much we accumulate, no matter how much we try to enjoy, we have to let it go to continue on to the next body. So what will you do? An intelligent person enjoys in this life and prepares themselves for the next life. It's called Hare Krishna Afterlife Insurance. Okay? It means, I remember seeing it on one of the devotees' cars when I joined Krishna consciousness. I think it was Rupa Raghunath Prabhu. It says there, Hare Krishna Afterlife Insurance. It's a sticker on the bumper. So that's what we're looking at. We're seeing further. And that's what Kapila Dev is giving us help. Okay, there's a little bit of time. I can give you this story. This is a nice story given by Radhesham Prabhu. I heard it many years ago, but I always like to meditate on it. There happens to be it's a story, okay? There's no need for disclaimer. Everyone understands this is a story. We get the essence of the story and apply it in our lives. So there happened to be a particular, okay, and those who were shipwrecked would end up on that island. So particular one, our protagonist, the person we're following, our lead, he happens to get shipwrecked on this island. And as he's wandering, he or she, I'll just say he for the sake of it because it's just easier for me, but he or she gets stuck on the island. And while stuck on the island, they happen to travel and traverse the island. And while traversing the island, they suddenly come across a group of people, a civilization. And these people, seeing him or her, immediately come forward and offer a warm welcome, a grand welcome. And they bring this person straight to their kingdom, into the royal chambers, into the throne, and immediately coronate such a person as the king. And so this person is thinking, what's happening here? Like suddenly this is, and they were mentioning, no, this is our custom. It is given as a prophecy that every so often a king or a person would appear from the forests in that direction, and they would be our king. They would be our ruler. And so it so happened that this particular ruler started ruling the kingdom in such a way, right? But they mentioned to them, you only have 3 years to live, according to our prophecy. Only 3 years to live. And so he was thinking, has this happened before? And so then he tried to find out, is it something that's happened before? And he finds out over a period of time that yes, many people have become shipwrecked, fallen onto this island, and they've become a person of the royal family, of the head, whole civilization, the whole kingdom. What's happened to them? He did not know. And after a lot of research, a lot of finding out, of course, during his time, as he performed his duties, he enjoyed, and he found out that after 3 years they get banished to some barren part of the land. So what does this person do? This person decides to start sending wealth onto the other side. So every year, only a certain amount of wealth was sent over. So that by the time that his or her 3 years had ended, what had happened? There was another kingdom on the other side to enjoy. Not only were they enjoying now, they were enjoying in the future. Of course, I butchered the story, but you understand the basics, right? The understanding is that we need to know where we are, properly understand our current situation. We are so proudly calling ourselves this age of information, but we do not know our current situation, right? We think everything is at our fingertips. Literally, you just turn your phone on and everything is information. But yet, we still do not know how to overcome birth, death, disease, and old age. We still do not know how to overcome these things. And we uselessly waste our time trying to solve problems which we don't even need to solve. We don't even need to worry about. They're just simply unnecessary problems that we've brought upon ourselves. Like, take for example, climate change. The result from so much industrialism. Why? Because people thought at that particular point in time, just doing things one at a time or a few hundred at a time, why not we do it thousands at a time, millions at a time? That will solve our problem. What will happen? My spiritual master explains, even in the 80s they were spreading these rumors that now it'll come to a stage where people won't have to work anymore, because it'll all be done by the machines and people can live a leisurely life. And so therefore we need, I forgot the term you used, leisure engineers. We need people who's qualified to teach people how to enjoy their life while not working. Did it come to pass? We're working harder than ever before, right? We're working harder than ever before. So see, the solution caused a greater problem. Prahlad Maharaj, he explains this in the 7th canto, that the solutions, they're band-aid solutions. The solutions themselves cause more problems. And they just simply waste our time in trying to problem solve them. Just to solve these problems, how much time is wasted, right? So therefore, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. Okay, so this is from the perspective of completely basic foundation. Okay, we're talking from the perspective of soul and the body. We've just touched on spirituality. Okay, so I'll just ramp it up and take it further. How can we apply this? Not how does this apply, but what is few ways that we can see and apply this within our devotional life. We practice Krishna consciousness, we practice spirituality to some form, to some extent. Okay, we give credit to people for that, but real spirituality is understanding what the soul is, soul separate from the body, and understanding its constitutional position, its dharma, and that's to serve Krishna's lotus feet, right? Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. The Swarupa, or the original occupational duty or identity of the living entity or the soul, is servant of Krishna. We are meant to serve Krishna to enjoy. Krishna's enjoyment means our enjoyment, right? So for us who are practicing Krishna consciousness with that consciousness, how does this apply to us? We can understand this through a particular story. Again, another story, just to make sure you all don't fall asleep. Yeah. And Bhagavatam is very expert in this. Unfortunately, when we read, we simply just go through the story and go straight to the prayers and just, when you just slowly pace through to get to the next pastime, right? Yeah? So, Bharat Maharaj, 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Everyone knows Bharat Maharaj. This is not the Bharat Maharaj under which Bharatvarsha is made, but rather the son of Rishabhadev, the incarnation of Godhead. He's an avatar. So his son, his name is Bharat Maharaj. And Bharat Maharaj was a highly exemplary king and a liberated soul. It's mentioned that he was on the stage of bhava. For those who don't understand, we have a process by which we understand who is liberated and who's not. And the topmost level of that liberation is called Krishna Prema, love for Krishna. Right? Because one who serves Krishna with love, such a person is the most liberated. Anandamayo bhyasat. The greatest enjoyment comes from a relationship, voluntarily engaging in a relationship with Krishna, not by force. And we start this process by, does anyone know? Shraddha, faith. Right? It goes slowly. Can anyone tell me these steps? Does anyone know? Shraddha is the first one. Then? Sorry, Mataji? Constancy comes a bit later. Kirtan is the process. Come on, mana krit. Sadhu. Okay, so we have faith, sadhu sangha, association of devotees. Then bhajana kriya means performing devotional service under the guidance of a spiritual master. Anartha niviti means getting rid of the unwanted things within the heart, purification. Nishtha, constancy. That's where you become fixed. Anartha niviti is like a hill you have to climb. Once you hit it, you hit nishtha, you're constant, and it's downhill. It just becomes just pure bliss there onward. It goes through ashakti, ruchi, bhava, prema, like that. Ashakti stata ruchi. Ruchi stata ashakti. It's ashakti then ruchi, yeah. So ashakti means detachment from material world or attachment to Krishna. Ruchi means taste. Bhava means the emotion. It's one step before full love of Godhead, ecstasy of love of Godhead. This Bharat Maharaj was on bhava. He was one step towards prema. So naturally he performed his duty as a king. Then when he's finished his duty, what did he do? He left for the forest, Vanaprastha. He left for the forest. It's mentioned that he left his kingdom just like how we leave the toilet. Bhagavatam is so in your face. Just like we don't care after we do our business, we just flush and leave. Like that, he was so detached from his family, from his kingdom, from his, worship, pride, prestige. All of those things did not affect him. He was not attached. He let it go. Of course, Bhagavatam is saying they're not like that. He's saying it's an example of the mood in which, the detachment in which he had. He let it go like that. That's how powerful he was in his practice of spiritual consciousness, in his practice of spirituality, in his Krishna consciousness. Right? He was so powerful. But here's the thing. He went to the forest and he did his tapasya or austerities in seclusion. Okay? And it so happened that while he was at a river one day, a tiger was in the vicinity. A mother deer was, a pregnant mother deer was also drinking from that same river. And a tiger happened to roar very loudly. And this mother deer, out of fear, jumped over the river to escape the sound. And she had prematurely given birth to a child who fell into the river, and she passed away on the other side. So then Bharat Maharaj, seeing the situation, picked up the baby deer and started to care for the baby deer. But what he had given up before, material nature, Maya, tested him again, and he became attached once again. Although taking the care of the deer, many people argue and discuss whether he should have taken it, whether he shouldn't have. But the point here to being mentioned is that over a period of time, he started, while taking care of the deer, he grew attached. And that attachment became stronger and stronger day by day. It didn't just happen like that, because he's the person who let go of his kingdom, mind you. He let go of that whole feeling of taking care of people and getting respect, and that relationship he had let go because he knew it's going to come to an end anyway. So let me cultivate my spiritual life, build the kingdom on the other side, so to speak. So then what he did was that he developed such a strong attachment that during his practice or his spiritual practices, while he was doing his worship, he was thinking of the deer. First it began with, I have to take care of the deer, so let me finish this, then I'll take care of the deer. Initially the intention was, let me do this service with all my heart for the pleasure of the Lord. Then the deer entered his consciousness. The attachment to the deer became stronger and stronger and stronger. To the extent that he was so eager to finish, he became so ritualistic that he just finished his practices in the morning just to take care of the deer. To one particular point, he even neglected all his spiritual practices. And all he was attached to was petting his deer. Sometimes he would chastise the deer and the deer would not come back for many hours. And he would sit there in anxiety, waiting for the deer to come back, the baby deer. Right? At one particular point in time, the deer disappeared altogether. And it had become so many hours, the next, morning to evening it wasn't there. So at night, this Bharat Maharaj, this great sage, decided to go and find the deer. But because of the darkness and the bewilderment, how his mind was just bewildered by the attachment, thinking that, his deer had died, he fell into a ditch or a ravine. And having fallen down into such a place, he had lost his life. He was on the verge of death. And that's when the deer appeared before him. And what was his thought before the point of death? The deer. And so he was obliged to take a body of the deer in his next life. But because of his advancement in spiritual life, he had memory of his practices. So then he sought out sages, and when he found them, he simply led a very austere life. It's mentioned, the deer's austere life. You know that? Simply eating dry leaves. That's all it did. And heard from the sages in that area. And when Bharat Maharaj in the deer body left his body, in the next life he became a Brahmana, or a saintly person, a human form of life. And so when he had accepted that form of life, then what had happened? He perfected his spiritual life and went back to Godhead. Back home, back to Godhead. So what I wanted to emphasize here is that, do you see how that choice he made of taking care of the baby deer caused great attachment, and that caused him to lose time, which is the most valuable asset he had. Remember, he let go of kingdom, he let go of his beautiful wife, his children, the prestige, so on and so forth, wealth. He let go of everything. But he still had one primary asset, his time. And see how Maya works in such a way that he got entangled and ensnared that he had wasted his time. So without going into the discussion of whether he should have taken care of the deer, when he should have let go of the deer, Acharyas mentioned the reason why he had suffered that fate was because he performed his devotional service alone. If someone else was there with him, they would have told him, excuse me, Bharat Prabhu, I think you're wasting or not wasting, you would be a bit more polished. You're spending too much time with the deer, you need to focus on your sadhana, your spiritual practices a bit more. But he did not have anyone. And sometimes, some of us, our minds, you may see it, you may not, but our minds hide this desire to enjoy within the deep recesses, within the darkness. And we don't realize how much time we are spending in trying to enjoy those things within the mind. And it doesn't come like this, mind you. Mind. It doesn't come like this. It comes slowly. Maya is so expert, the illusory energy is so expert. We should never trust the mind, and we should never think we're liberated up until the point we get to Krishna's lotus feet. Because Maya sneaks in very small. What do they say? In like a needle, out like a plow. No? What is that? Is that the saying? Yeah? It is the saying. So it comes small. Very inconspicuous. Is it conspicuous or inconspicuous? Inconspicuous, yeah. It comes so small that you can't see. And by the time you realize it, the damage is done. The damage is done. Like for example, if you have a dam, even if the dam has like a fracture, like a hairline fracture, that's all that is needed for the pressure to break the dam. That's all that's needed. Same thing with the mind. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that we should never trust. See, the mind and the senses are so powerful that if one of the senses roams free, immediately destroyed. Our endeavors are completely sidetracked. So for Bharat Maharaj, you can understand that piece of time that he had spent, that he invested in taking care of the deer, and he continued to invest more and more of his time. Mind you, we don't have much time, right? Prabhupada says here, a conditioned soul lives in the body for a particular fixed measurement of time. So that's our asset, really. Not the money we have in our bank balance, that's temporary. That's an asset, but it's a temporary asset. The permanent asset is that with the time we have. And that's why when you perform devotional service, Gopinath is so pleased, because that is the most valuable thing that you can do. Engage your energies and time in Krishna's service. And that's why when we offer our hard-earned wealth in Krishna's service, Krishna is pleased. Because what is now? Money is time, right? Time is money. Right? Money is not time. Time is money. Right? The time you spend, you can earn so much. It's translated that, unfortunately, now. And that if you engage in Krishna's service, Krishna appreciates it so much, and you make so much advancement. And that's how you can overcome this wastage of time. Engage your senses more and more in Krishna's service, and take the association and guidance of devotees. Because the more guidance you have, the more easy it is to see Maya enter and to protect yourself from her. Because she will test you until you're ready to go back to Godhead. She will test you till the last, right? She may even appear before you as Krishna. And you have to be ready to distinguish whether it's the illusory energy or not. We have to become so perfect, so attached to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, we don't see anything else except them and their devotees and the service for them. Right? That's absorption. That's attachment. So, everyone except Krishna conscious devotees are carried away by the strong power of time without their knowledge. That's the point here. Without your knowledge. Just like the last point, just as the clouds are being swept away by the wind without their knowledge, the conditioned soul is being carried away by time. And so Kapila Dev will explain this in the rest of this chapter. How a living entity struggles so hard, what happens at the end of life, how they're disrespected by their family members, how much suffering they have to go, being put as a side character. Like sometimes in Indian villages, you'll see the old person gets chucked out of the house on a bed, and that's all they do all day, just simply sit there, right? They'll just simply sit there and watch people go, and if there's a chance to speak, they'll speak as long as they can, and then retire. And Kapila Dev will explain this a bit more in detail. So these things we don't realize now. Kapila Dev is actually giving us forewarning. Don't waste your time. This is what's coming. Better you engage it in this way. Properly engage your energies, your time in Krishna consciousness now, so that you can reap the benefits later in this life, at this point in time, later in this life, and after this life. And that's how we should see time. Okay, so I'll end here. we can, maybe one question, yeah?
So you spoke a lot about attachment. So I just want to understand your view of how do you discriminate love and attachment?
Attachment, I can tell you what attachment is for a devotee. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjate nirbandhe krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya muchyate. So that which is engaged in relationship with Krishna, that is proper attachment. It's used only for Krishna's service. That is proper attachment. In fact, if you're talking about relationships, the basic understanding is that our relationship with one another in this temple room is through Radha Gopinath. Right? Because you're a devotee of Shri Radha Gopinath, I'm a devotee of Shri Radha Gopinath. Gopinath's always the center. So the relationship's already established there on the spiritual platform. Yeah? And based on how we are in our progress of devotional service, we will relate and we will associate with the goal of giving Krishna pleasure. And anything useful in that relationship for enhancing our Krishna consciousness, we're allowed to be attached for that. That's why when you have a home, a family, it's recommended that a grihastha makes his home a temple. His or her home a temple. So that everything is geared towards pleasing the deities at home. Right? Because then everything becomes Vaikuntha then. Everything you do, your work is for the deities. So that you can maintain devotees of Krishna who are your family members. Right? You work for the deities, you offer your food to the deities, you offer your clothes to your deities, you offer your house to the deities, you offer your family to your deities. Everything is offering to Krishna. Right? That's how we develop attachment to Krishna. And anything in relationship with Krishna to enhance that, yeah. And if you want to take it a step further, if you want to become more revolutionary, you think about giving Krishna to others. That'll open up so much more doors on how you can engage all your facilities in giving Krishna to others. Then you become no longer bound up, restricted on what is attachment. If I'm going to be attached, it's going to be difficult to become detached. If you're engaged in this preaching movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, naturally you'll understand what I need to use to give Krishna consciousness to others, and when they have it, or whether I need it or no longer need it, discard it so that I can continue giving Krishna consciousness to others. If I need something else, I will engage that. So whatever it may be in the vicinity, you'll use it in Krishna consciousness. Then the consciousness becomes more and more purified, you'll become more and more a pure devotee, that you'll become so exceptional in your service that no matter what it is in material existence, you lose it in Krishna's service. Like for example, that story Prabhupada has, that when he went to Kumbh Mela, one Mayavadi sannyasi gave him stacks of flyers propounding Mayavad philosophy that you are God, I am God, yatamat tatapat. And that's totally against Krishna consciousness, totally against Vedic culture. Right? We are separate from God. And we're a servant of God, of Krishna. So then the devotees asked Prabhupada, should we throw it? Prabhupada said, no, keep it here for a moment. And so then what Prabhupada did, when it came time in the evening to serve prasadam to the guests, and millions of people came. If not millions, hundreds and thousands. Right? So then what did Prabhupada do? He told them, you use this flyer and distribute prasad, because how many plates you're going to get? So then he said, use the pamphlet, use the flyer to distribute the khichdi, the prasad and the halwa. So that's how he served to all the guests there. You know, they took it, used it and threw it. See how exceptional Prabhupada is in his Krishna consciousness? That nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. It looked like it wasn't useful for Krishna's service, but Prabhupada saw how to use it in Krishna's service. That is pure devotional service. No, this is the thing. What is your definition of attachment? Because love is attachment. Love is attachment to the nth degree. Otherwise, how will you love someone? You'll love so much, you're attached to them, right? You'll do anything for them. That's love, right? For their senses. Is that not attachment? We need to. So the distinguish you have to distinguish what is material attachment and what is spiritual attachment. Material attachment means for one's senses. Spiritual attachment means for Krishna's senses. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. Yeah. And here it's already 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for listening. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ भगवान की जय, शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।